So fascinating when you see people that don't have contact with the outside world. Like, I'm sure you're aware of that recent story. The missionary was killed by the people on North Sentinel Island.
What if ancient wisdom could outsmart gravity? What if children could see underwater as clearly as they read this screen? Across remote jungles, deep forests, and isolated islands, there are people whose everyday lives defy everything we think we know about the human body and the universe. In this wild ride from the Joe Rogan Experience, we explore 9 tribes with abilities so bizarre, they'll challenge your sense of what's real. One tribe's tradition may seem mythical until you realize they live 140 feet in the air. What are they hiding? And how is any of this even possible? The Korowai Tribe. The Korowai Tribe of Papua New Guinea remained completely isolated from the modern world until the 1970s, with no record of outside contact before that time. Their secluded way of life, deep in the rainforest, helped preserve a culture that is both fascinating and mystifying. The Korowai are best known for their spectacular tree houses, some of which reach up to 140 feet high. These towering homes are built on stilts, using banyan tree trunks as central supports, sago palm bark for floors and walls, and sago leaves for roofing. Access is limited to wooden ladders, keeping them safe from floods, wild animals, and enemy tribes. One of the most controversial aspects of the Korowai's history is their past practice of cannibalism. While many indigenous groups have been accused of the act, the Korowai are often regarded as one of the last known tribes to officially practice it. This practice was not random or purely for sustenance. It was believed to be a necessary act to rid the community of individuals possessed by evil spirits, specifically the Kakua, whom they viewed as witches or demons. Cannibalism was, therefore, a spiritual ritual aimed at protecting the community from what they perceived as supernatural threats. While they acknowledge pressures from the outside, many Korowais remain deeply spiritual, with a belief system derived from witchcraft and supernatural forces. Death is rarely attributed to illness or natural causes. An unexpected event that leads to death is usually seen as caused by evil spirits or possession on the part of someone. These strong cultural beliefs have impinged upon social behavior so that they remain isolationist and suspicious of outsiders, who are often considered to be potential harbors of evil. Interestingly, some scientists have studied the Korowai's apparent suppression of diseases often associated with cannibalistic practices, such as prion-based illnesses. As stated during episode 1240 of Joe Rogan's podcast, where the guest Forrest Galante was present, this tribe has not shown a neurological decline common in other societies that have practiced the same rituals. Researchers speculate this could either be because cannibalism has rarely taken place among the Korowai, or possibly due to some unknown pattern of genetic or environmental resistance. This speaks volumes about their ingenuity that the Korowai have managed to survive in one of the most remote and harshest environments on Earth, while having complex spiritual, architectural, and social systems. A significant number of Korowai still do not adopt integration, although they are said to have come closer to outsiders and often interact with tourists and researchers. Their towering tree houses, the imaginary beliefs they keep, and their past, highly controversial, make them one of the most mysterious and resilient tribes of the modern world. Floating huts and spirit rituals, that was just the beginning. The next tribe has a skill you won't believe is real. The Mochan People. The Mochan People, often referred to as the Sea Gypsies, are a nomadic tribe residing off the coasts and islands of Thailand and Burma. Originally migrating from South China, they have no permanent homeland and live primarily on boats called kabang. Their entire lifestyle is deeply rooted in the sea. Fishing, freediving, and beachcombing are part of their daily lives. They rarely interact with the outside world, only trading with mainlanders when they need essential supplies like rice or petrol. One of the most extraordinary traits of the Mochan tribe is their ability to hold their breath underwater for up to 4 minutes, a feat far beyond the 30 to 90 seconds typical of the average human. This exceptional skill isn't the result of advanced technology or training, but rather an adaptation developed over generations. What's even more fascinating is that this ability is most noticeable in the children, who dive frequently without any breathing equipment to gather seafood. Over time, their bodies have adapted physiologically to their aquatic environment. Mochan children, in addition to having a capacity for lungs, have a very sharp sight in the submerged environment. Most people have seen their underwater vision diminished, but these children easily dive and hunt below the ocean surface. Such explorations caught the attention of researchers like Anna Gislen of the University of Lund, who went to the tribe in 1999. Gislen saw Mochan children diving with eyes wide open, skillfully gathering clams and sea cucumbers. His findings indicated that either their eyes were physically adapted or they had learned how to control them differently underwater. Still, the Mochan have experienced social discrimination, ostracism, and marginalization by the mainland populations of Thailand. Being different and living in an isolated way, they have often been treated as lesser beings. But the Mochan can carry on preserving their lifestyles by living within their community, closely associated with the sea that has been the source of their livelihood and cultural identity for generations. This tale is not merely of adaptation, but cultural survivorship. The Mochan epitomizes the few instances in which mankind has evolved to survive extreme conditions without the necessity of modern technology. Their abilities in underwater have incited world scientific interest and admiration that displaying what mankind's physiology can do through the environment and necessity. The Hudza Tribe. The Hudza Tribe, also known as the Hudzabi, is one of the last remaining true hunter-gatherer societies in the world. Located between the soda waters of Lake Eyasi and the escarpments of the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania, this tribe of approximately 1,300 people has remained largely unchanged for thousands of years. Living in harmony with nature, the Hudza rely solely on what the forest provides, avoiding modern tools and farming methods. They are recognized as one of the oldest and most authentic tribal groups in Africa. What sets the Hudza apart is their tough skin, so resilient that they can eat honeycombs filled with bees without flinching. They've developed immunity or resistance to bee stings, a rare biological adaptation that scientists and visitors find astonishing. Beehives in their region are guarded by aggressive soldier bees and often located high in baobab trees, yet Hudza tribesmen fearlessly climb and extract honey, consuming it raw. Their unique ability to withstand bee venom is a result of generations of direct exposure in the wild. But the Hudza's relationship with honey does not end there. They share a mutual bond with birds, mostly with a honey guide, which leads them to beehives. Hudza tribespeople whistle and shout a special tune, prompting the birds to guide them to hidden hives. After smoking out the bees using fire, the Hudza collect honey from the hive, but leave leftover wax and remnants for the birds, an interesting example of cooperation between humans and animals. The Hudza lead a nomadic lifestyle, hunting game every day with bows of animal tendons and arrows tips of poisonous tree bark. The practices are very efficient and highly ritualized. For example, if the hunter downs an animal, he decorates the bow with its skin as a trophy. Meat is eaten immediately and given to others. No food is kept for later consumption. Each fresh day is filled with new hunting and gathering practices with all tubers, berries, the fruit of the baobab, some more honeycomb, and undoubtedly fleshy meat, as that's all that gives completeness to their diet. They have great survival capacities as well as a unique human biology. The Hudza are threatened with increasing modernity and land loss, but still remain quite resilient and hold strong to the traditions. Their skin is pain-resistant, and their partnership with nature is a rare and powerful connection to Earth, which continues to influence and fascinate researchers, anthropologists, and travelers worldwide. The Maui Tribe. The Maui Tribe, native to New Zealand, originally arrived from East Polynesia in a series of canoe voyages between 1320 and 1350. Upon settling in New Zealand, they formed a range of sub-tribes such as the Wee and Hapu, each with its own customs and identity. The Maori have maintained a strong cultural connection to their ancestral land and spiritual heritage, which is visibly expressed through their traditional costumes, language, and art. Their deep-rooted traditions continue to shape their cultural and national identity in modern New Zealand. One of the most powerful and widely recognized elements of Maori culture is the haka, a traditional war dance performed with synchronized movements, stomping, chanting, and intense facial expressions. The haka is more than just a performance. It's a symbol of strength, unity, and defiance, often used to welcome guests, challenge opponents, or commemorate important events. These performances require immense physical coordination and emotional expression, making them a true cultural spectacle known across the world. They know how to fight and have a long history of not only taking up space in a trance or dance, but also as great warriors with a legendary reputation in the South Pacific. Bodies tattooed with unique tribal designs, painted traditionally, all become aesthetic and spiritual objects. As early as childhood, Maori children engage in training for bodily combat and the use of various traditional weapons. This raises the spirit of a warrior, which then becomes a key focus of the tribal values so that every generation will stand ready to protect their community and ancestors. The tribes have shown a great deal of resilience against the colonial and cultural onslaughts of hundreds of years. Not only that, they have butted heads with the colonial state and thereafter worked endlessly toward the preservation of their old values, languages, and practices among what is now New Zealand's national character. The haka is now an integral part of every big sporting event. The Maori language is taught in schools, and awareness of these cultures is enhanced by political activism and social acknowledgement. Nevertheless, their true legacy is not only their spirit of war, but also their remarkable appearance, along with their heroism, as able to hold on to a proud identity for generations despite adversities. The Maori people are perhaps the most culturally vibrant indigenous people globally, who balance conserving their traditions with increasing participation in New Zealand's modern society. This strength, resilience, and immeasurable sense of community embed them firmly into the cultural heritage of this country. The Skeleton Tribe. In the Simbu province of Papua New Guinea, a tribe known as the Skeleton Tribe has fascinated outsiders with their haunting appearance and rich cultural legends. The tribe is famous for its unique body art, where warriors paint their bodies with black and white clay to resemble skeletons. This eerie aesthetic, which resembles walking corpses, has become both a form of spiritual expression and tactical deception. Their skeletal appearance is more than symbolic. It's rooted in a dramatic legend passed down for generations. According to tribal lore, the origin of this tradition dates back around 200 years, when a group of village hunters ventured into the mountains and mysteriously disappeared. Concerned, a search party followed and discovered a cave filled with skeletons and a giant monster inside. In a desperate attempt to escape, the warriors covered themselves with skeletal body paint made of clay, hoping to blend in with the remains and deceive the creature into thinking they were already dead. Their strategy worked. They were able to sneak out undetected while the beast slept and returned home to tell their story. This legendary escape became the impetus for the now iconic skeletal painting traditions of the tribe. But the culture of the Skeleton Tribe encompasses much more than haunting body art. Vibrant dances, rhythmic drumming, and ritualistic ceremonies form an integral part of their culture and their communion with ancestors and nature. They perform these dances during key tribal events, marking important moments of celebration as well as safeguarding their mythology and identity. True to their image, the Skeleton Tribe has acquired a reputation for being fearsome. However, they do not use their looks for aggression. Instead, it acts as a security mechanism to assert strength and turn away attackers before engaging in open confrontation. By fostering a fearsome presence, the tribe has been able to defend its homeland from invasion and confrontation, so that it may continue its traditions in peaceful isolation. The saga of Skeleton Tribe stands much in testimony to how myth, environment, and survival are modes of building communities. Their skeletal disguise is born out of fear and ingenuity and has now become a symbol of cultural resilience. Such a darshan is possible only in a location where diverse tribal practices come together as one. Very special because it's not just their ghostly appearances, but the deeply spiritual meaning behind that hallmark of their own creativity and will to endure. It has been in recent years that anthropologists, cultural documentarians, and curious travelers have begun to take an interest in the Skeleton Tribe's unique customs. Still cautious of outsiders, some members of the tribe have cautiously shared certain snippets of their practices in controlled ceremonial displays. Such exchanges have thrown the spotlight on the question of cultural preservation versus cultural exchange, even as the tribe walks the tightrope of protecting their heritage and gaining some fame within the global arena. Keep your jaw dropped, because the next tribe might just leap right over your expectations. The Masai Tribe. The Masai Tribe, one of the most iconic indigenous groups in Africa, lives in Kenya and northern Tanzania, particularly near the Masai Mara Reserve and Amboseli, close to the Tanzanian border. With their distinct appearance, traditions, and way of life, the Masai have captured global attention for generations. Known for their nomadic lifestyle, they are deeply tied to cattle herding, which forms the core of their culture, economy, and spiritual beliefs. A man's wealth and status are measured by the number of cattle, wives, and children he has. A particularly fascinating aspect of Maasai culture is their diet, which includes meat, milk, fat, honey, and even cattle blood. While drinking blood might seem extreme, it is typically reserved for special rituals or medicinal purposes, not a daily practice. The blood is drawn from live cattle by making a precise incision in the animal's neck with an arrow, and once enough blood is collected, the wound is sealed using traditional methods to keep the animal alive and healthy. This careful process reflects the Maasai's deep respect for their livestock. The Maasai funerary rites are rather different. They abstain from burying the corpse, believing that doing so harms the earth. Instead, they abandon the body in the wild to be devoured by scavengers and thus return the person to nature. However, should the deceased happen to be a distinguished chief, exceptions will be made. The clan has a rigid social system with regard to the wives. The first wife wields the highest status. Her abode is built closest to that of the husband. The fierce warrior culture of the Maasai includes hunting lions as a rite of passage. Although the practice was phased out in 2008, in its place has emerged the Maasai Olympics, an event that celebrates traditional warrior skills in running, cattle herding, and spear throwing. These cultural displays that have been modernized to allow conservation efforts promote the spirit of valor and defiance without compromising wildlife. Arguably, the most worldwide known Maasai tradition is the jumping dance, also termed the adumu, wherein young men leap vertically into the air to showcase strength and strength. The dance retains the symbolic significance of the tribe's defiance against gravity and being able to showcase its physical prowess to the utter mesmerization of the outside world. With their towering height, athletic build, and dominant appearance, the Maasai have often been regarded as one of the most physically impressive tribes in Africa. Although their lifestyles have been affected by modernity, the Maasai have retained strong cultural ties, modernity notwithstanding. Thus, they ultimately represent a confounding combo of tradition and adaptation. The Maasai understand that they possess culture and some equine ability, but what stands clearly above the rest is a great oral tradition in which elders are living libraries of tribal law, history, and wisdom. Storytelling, song, and proverbs are avenues for entertainment, but also serve the purpose of preserving identity over generations. Their regalia, dotted with red shuka robes and beadworks, is not simply aesthetic. Each color, pattern, and ornament is a symbolic representation of age, marital status, and social role. Despite the incursion of tourism and globalization at their border, the Maasai remain the custodians of a dynamic heritage, interspersed with elements of ritual, endurance, and a worldview shaped by centuries beneath the African sun. The Pygmies. The Pygmies are a group of indigenous forest-dwelling tribes spread across Central Africa, especially in countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, and the Central African Republic. While the term pygmy has been deemed offensive in some contexts, it is still widely used to refer to these forest hunter-gatherers. Among the most well-known groups are the Mbuti of the Ituri forest, the Aka, and the Baka. Despite their small stature, with many adults rarely growing taller than 5 feet, these tribes are renowned for their strength, resilience, profound knowledge of the forest ecosystem. The Pygmies lead a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, relying on the forest for survival. The men are skilled hunters, using spears, bows, and traps to catch wild animals, while the women gather tubers, fruits, and medicinal plants. A particularly prized food in their culture is honey, which plays a vital role in their diet. To collect it, they often climb over 100 feet into the forest canopy, using smoke to subdue bees before harvesting the hives. This dangerous but essential practice is passed down through generations and demonstrates their physical courage and connection to the environment. Under physical strength and quite a bit of understanding of nature, the Pygmies suffer severe discrimination and violence. Cannibalistic tribes have preyed on Pygmies over the years by hunting down Pygmies for their flesh and blood. This state of affairs leaves many Pygmy communities in a state of constant fear and isolation, so they need to devise very strong defensive tactics to defend themselves. This gruesome reality remains, for the most part, outside the purview of the global community, thus deepening the tragedy of their situation. While very few members of the Pygmy tribe have access to modern education on fitness and nutrition, many of them are described as incredibly fit and muscular by most standards. A visitor on the Joe Rogan podcast once talked about visiting a tribe of Pygmies deep in the rainforest and was amazed at how jacked and strong they looked. Everything that then goes on physically in day-to-day life, like climbing, hunting, and gathering, effortlessly builds natural endurance and strength, making them perhaps the most athletically adapted people on the planet, without ever seeing the inside of a gym. This tells the tale of the Pygmies, a culture with all its wealth and richness of survival and adversity. From their inconceivable forest skills to their fight against either exploitation or marginalization, they epitomize both the power of tradition as well as the savagery of neglect. Their future remains uncertain because modernization and deforestation threaten their ways of life, although many of them may seem unchanged. Yet, with their strong tie with the forest and indomitable physical and spiritual resilience, they are one of the most captivating, prolific, enduring indigenous groups worldwide. In recent years, numerous Pygmy communities have come into research work, cooperation with NGOs, and collaboration with cultural preservationists to record their oral histories, music, and traditional knowledge. Particularly, their polyphonic singing, with its elegant complexity, has captured the attention of the global media and is often characterized as one of the oldest forms of vocal music surviving today. Once marginalized by history, now some young Pygmies are stepping into the modern world, fighting for their land rights, healthcare, and education, yet trying to hang on to their old roots. This gentle revival of culture is not just survival. It is an assertion of identity and hope, that their long-suppressed voices will be heard. The Dogon Tribe. The Dogon Tribe is one of the most intriguing indigenous groups in West Africa, primarily residing along the Bandiagara Escarpment in Mali. This area, characterized by towering 1,600-foot sandstone cliffs, separates the Senogondo Plains from the Bandiagara Highlands. The Dogon people originally settled here over 1,000 years ago, seeking refuge from Islamic invaders who were forcing religious conversion. The cliffs provided not only a strategic defensive position, but also access to water from the nearby Niger River, making it an ideal location for a hidden, self-sufficient community. Unlike most other African tribes that built ground-level villages, the Dogon constructed homes and granaries into the cliff faces, defying gravity and maximizing safety. This vertical lifestyle helped them remain isolated for centuries, preserving their unique traditions, architecture, and belief systems. The Dogon are especially known for their mask dances, wooden sculptures, and spiritual rituals, which are often centered on ancestral worship and cosmic order. Their religious ceremonies are deeply symbolic and remain exclusive to the tribe, with outsiders rarely allowed full access. One of the many interesting things about the Dogon culture is that it has ancient knowledge of astronomy. During the late 1930s and early 1940s, French anthropologists such as Marcel Griol and Germain Dieterlen studied and documented Dogon culture with the revelation that they had passed on detailed knowledge about the Sirius star system and, more importantly, about Sirius B, a star whose features could not be seen without a telescope. Such knowledge, the Dogon said, had been handed down from their ancestors and was subject to theories of extraterrestrial involvement as widely held. But most modern scholars now believe that it is symbolically myth rather than scientific observation. Apart from studying astronomy, the Dogon also mastered human anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology, despite the fact that they lived with limited or no contact with the modern world through most of history. They even have an intricate calendar and a symbolic language of signs that numbers into the thousands. Another important cultural belief pays homage to the twins, who are viewed in the Dogon community as sacred beings or incarnations of gods. Dogon mythology states that the world was once filled with perfect twin pairs, and so the birth of twins continues to be commemorated as one of the divine events. Having had little contact with the outside world since the beginning of time, they have fairly consciously resisted all influence upon their culturally and spiritually independent self. They have maintained their very ancestral way of life. In recent centuries, these very largely have been growing religious and ethnic persecutions by dominant Muslim communities against the Dogon, forcing many into flight or further into hiding up the cliffs. Nevertheless, the Dogon still cling to a culture steeped in cosmic beliefs, ritual sophistication, and architectural ingenuity, which remains both mystical and one of the most stubborn in the African continent. Indeed, the Dogon culture represents deep spiritual scientific discoveries and still has an artistic richness that attracts global attention. Within these carvings are elaborate wooden masks that symbolize different ancestral spirits or cosmic forces. They are used in sacred rites such as the Dama dance ceremony, which is thought to guide the souls of the dead into the next world. The ceremonies can last for many days in a very theatrical way, combining music and movement into stagecraft and beyond, with meaning that captivates not only the participants, but also the few observers allowed as spectators. Nowadays, even with outside pressures and limited resources, the Dogon are passing on the very artistic talent to generation after generation so as to really preserve their traditions and the very worldview that physical, spiritual, and cosmic all remain intertwined. Just when you thought you'd seen it all, the last tribe enters like something from a nightmare. The Assaro Mudmen. The Assaro Mudmen, a tribe from the highlands of Papua New Guinea, are best known for their ghostly appearance, created by covering themselves in white clay and wearing terrifying handmade masks. Their fearsome look isn't just for show, It was originally developed as a defense strategy rather than an offensive war display. Unlike other tribes that adorned themselves for battle, the Mudmen used their frightening image to scare off enemies and avoid conflict altogether. This appearance has earned them both reverence and fear among neighboring communities. The origin of the Mudmen's haunting tradition dates back roughly 2 centuries. According to legend, the Assaro people were once attacked by a stronger neighboring tribe and fled into the nearby Assaro River. When the attackers spotted the survivors emerging from the muddy waters covered in white clay, they mistook them for ghosts and fled in terror. Realizing the power of this illusion, the Assaro began intentionally replicating the look to protect themselves from future threats. Over time, this practical survival tactic evolved into a defining element of their cultural identity. It does not smear the clay on their faces, as they consider the mud from the river poisonous. They make their masks using rocks, sticks, and other materials they find, and they give each a really grotesque otherworld look. Some masks also have bamboo claws and horns attached to them. Mudmen are always toting bows, spears, and clubs around, but never actually fighting with them. Completion of the illusion they want of looking like a powerful supernatural warrior who will deter any threat. Spiritually, the Assaro Mudmen are of strong belief and are maintained by ritual dances and ceremonies and community storytelling. The slow, haunting movements that go hand in hand with that eerie visual performance give it a presence that is forever combined with performance arts and ancestral story. Of course, many areas in Papua New Guinea have opened to modernity, and the Assaro have managed to preserve and even publicize their heritage by staging performances for tourists and cultural exhibitions around the world. In the end, the Assaro Mudmen serve as a powerful illustration of how myth and imagination, with survival, can coalesce into an enduring cultural icon. What began as a ruse to deceive the enemy has now evolved into a grand tradition, celebrated for both its cultural richness and dramatic scope. The Assaro are thus unique among all the many diverse tribal identities found within such a colorful region, not because of violence or warfare, but because of their ingenious use of fear and illusion to protect and preserve their community. Not only terrifying in looks, but their rites of performance, the Assaro Mudmen seem to have a richer psychological conquest, waging fear as a means of manipulating and negotiating. For that geographical locality, where physical confrontation is almost inevitable, Assaro chose the alternative of changing perception. Fewer bloodshed periods and arrangements made them a tribe that deserves respect, but distance. The demonstration of psychological warfare through aesthetics shows a rare level of cultural intelligence, intimidation over aggression, and illusion over conflict. If you enjoyed this wild journey into the unknown, hit that like button, drop a comment with the tribe that blew your mind the most, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories from around the world. Ready to keep going? Click the next video on your screen. You won't believe what happens in that one.